Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Holiness, the Stig.
And a bit of a buzz about everybody, we know we can do this, we just have to get it right at every stage, but we're looking forward to a great fight.
So, for those of you who might not know him, he's Perry McCarthy. He drove for Andrea Moda in Formula 1 with a kind of a rocky history of the team, rocky Formula 1 season, but his story is very interesting. And he's the original Stig from Top Gear, and, well, doesn't really need more introduction just with the Stig, probably, and, well, the fateful history of Andrea Moda. Welcome to the talk show, Perry, and I'm so sorry for the technical issues.
It's okay. I had a small sleep while you were, because I'm getting older.
Okay, really, really sorry. I'm just gonna. Okay. So, okay. I like to start these talks from the beginning. So I know your first steps towards motorsport are not the usual. Usually people start karting from a very, very young age, and they develop their passion there, and they aim for the stars at the age of 6 or 7. But I know your story is a little bit different from the rest. How did this passion for motorsport and cars in general start?
Well, it wasn't at 6 or 7, as you know. I always liked cars when I was a kid, and when I got a bit older, I went to college and I kept drawing cars. And then a friend of mine followed Formula One, followed motor racing, and he kept bringing these great magazines, beautiful photographs of Formula One cars. So I kept drawing them, and I kept reading about these drivers. At the same time, I just got my road license to drive on the road, and I was never very good at football or rugby or cricket or all those sports, but I found that I could drive, or I thought I could drive, So I was thinking, yeah, I'm really good. That's what I was thinking. So the two things came together. I started reading about motor racing and got a real interest for it. And at the same time, something very unusual happened. We have a famous circuit in England called Brands Hatch Motor Racing Circuit, which is near London. And they have instructors there, people who take people off the street and instruct them. Well, the top instructor kept hearing about my road driving. The stories kept coming to him. So he actually came out. He came out to find me, and he took me down to the track and said, okay, get in, show me what you can do. So I showed him how fast I was, etc. And he went, okay. Now, this guy was about 60 years old, He got in the car and showed me what he could do. And he was amazing. He was so much better than me, and I'm sitting there thinking, this old guy has gone crazy. I'm sitting there thinking, we're going to die, That's how good he was.
I can only imagine that feeling.
Absolutely. But then he said, I saw some things, Perry. He said, get back in the car and show me again. And I'd kind of seen what he was doing, and I just had more confidence this time. And I went around and, did a good job. In fact, he got me out the car and just said, that's it. You've got to be a racing driver. And he phoned the manufacturers, and he actually said that I was the best he'd ever seen. And that was good for me. I went, yes, you're right. But that was the decision. The decision was made then to say, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to do this professionally. And being an idiot, I said, oh, and I'm going to be a Formula One driver, because I just knew so little about it. But that was the thing. So I had no money. So to get the money together to start motor racing, I went to work for 2 years in the North Sea. So the oil rigs, when you're out, the big structures in the sea that take the oil out the ground, out the sea. Yeah. So I was on there for 2 years.
Wow.
Because it paid a lot of money. So that was, tough, really tough work. But it gave me enough money to start. The problem was, by the time I started motor racing, I wasn't Max Verstappen in Formula One at 17. I was starting motor racing at 21 years old. So my chances of getting to Formula One were probably about 1,000,000 to 1. It was no money, no experience, except a big mouth and saying, oh, I'm going to be a great racing driver. But I learned quite quickly, and I enjoyed the speed, and I enjoyed the whole thing. It suited me, and I was able to win the British Formula 4 Championship very soon. So that was great. But as people who want to go racing know, the more you go up, the more money you need, the more sponsors you need. So my time was spent making phone calls, talking to people on a train. Hello, what do you do? Do you work for a big company? Will you sponsor me? If you can't sponsor me, do you know somebody inside the company that could sponsor me? Can I? All the time, knocking on doors, making phone calls, sending letters. So bit by bit, I was getting sponsorship in. And at the same time, I made sure that the newspapers in England were giving me some press, so I could say to the sponsors, look, because this was before the internet, of course, So the newspapers, etc., that's the way you got publicity, and that's the way the sponsors got publicity. So I kept trying to do those things to try to be valuable, and then it worked, because I got a big sponsor to go into Formula 3, and that was myself and Damon Hill and Johnny Herbert and Mark Blundell and two others, Julian Bailey and Martin Donnelly. And we were all friends, and we all came through to the next step, which is International Formula 3000. And we're all fighting on and off the track to get the money, to get the drive, to then battle with each other. So we could see it was possible, but you just had to keep fighting. So I'll stop talking for a moment. But that was how it all started. But each time you're coming through, it's another year or another year and a half, or waiting to get money. So it was just trying to believe all the time that I could get there, that I could get to Formula One. That was the dream, and I was just fighting so hard to make it happen.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think the most repeated answer, when asking these questions and people telling us their story, it's that they're always very keen on persistence. Like, I knocked and knocked and knocked and called and spent, I don't know how many times just knocking on doors, talking to people, and like over and over again, how insistent I was, and that. So I think that's very important, and I think it's something. It's not just particular for this, for motorsport. I think it can be applied to anything in life.
I agree.
Just keep knocking and keep trying, and something like not that new, but like I think it's the first time it's phrased on my talk. On my talks is believing. Like it was about believing you could do it and believing you could get the money and believing in yourself. And that's also something very important. So thank you for for stressing that out.
Well, I mean, I didn't get everything right. I really didn't. If I had had, let's say, a wealthy, a rich family, or if I had had people who knew the sport or knew the business that were with me, it would have been better, because they would have been able to help me not make as many mistakes on the track or off the track, and I was capable of making mistakes in both those places.
Yeah,
But
I read that you would go to the newspapers and say, "No, I'm from here, I'm from there, I'm from," just to get your name out. And
yeah, you're right. I mean, I'll just explain that a bit better. So I live in one area in England, but I would go to many areas and say to the newspapers that I lived in that area and that I lived in that area and that I lived in that. So all these newspapers thought I lived close to them. So they kept giving me all the publicity. And I was able to say to a sponsor, look, I get publicity everywhere. So but that's the problem. You have to, if you don't have the money and if you don't have the opportunity, you have to find an opportunity. You have to make it happen. You have to think, how can I do this? The number one thing I didn't want to do, Evan, was to be a bit older and be in a bar, in a pub, and saying, oh, I could have been a racing driver, but I didn't have the money. That's unacceptable to me. It was just work, work, work. If I don't have the money, find the money. If I don't know the people, find them, get to know them all the time to do that. Because this is a tough game. It really is. And it was full of problems. But it's that kind of, if you're prepared to just be inside this and what needs to be done all the time, then there's no guarantees, but it does help you. And as you said, that's the same in many aspects of life.
Yes, and you really take that statement to the next level. When you started in Formula One, I believe that you didn't get like a premium passes, you had to work to get to the races, to get the transportation.
Yeah, I mean, even in Formula One, it was crazy, because to be in Formula 3000, when I was in Formula 3, I was able to earn a good amount of money from sponsorship, and I used that money to put into property as well. And so when I wasn't racing, I was working on the property to make sure it was better, more valuable. So I managed to get a property that earned a lot of money, which we lived in as a family. But when it came to Formula 3000, it was at that time there had been a financial crisis. I couldn't get any sponsorship. There was an opportunity to go Formula 3000. So we just said goodbye to the house. That was it.
What did you do then?
Well,
where did you leave?
That's how I got the money. We just gave the house away, to get the money to go into Formula 3000.
Yeah.
That was the risk. And it kind of worked, because I did, from where I was in Formula 3000, it went very well for me. And the reputation kept going up, which is what we're all looking to try to achieve. And then I got a drive in America, and that went very well for me in America. And it's because of that all the UK press in Formula 3000 and when I was in America, they kept saying Perry should be in Formula One. And then finally, there was an opportunity, but with a really small team who had no money. And so they signed me, and I said, fantastic, I've made it. I've got into Formula One. I was so pleased. But of course, I became aware fairly soon how bad this team were. I mean, really bad. We weren't just slow, we were also dangerous as well, So that was wonderful. But what you said is correct. They didn't have any money to pay me, so I had to this is Formula One. I'm a Formula One driver now, and I had to find the money to get to the race and find the money to stay there. So I started speaking, telling stories to tour operators who had guests at a Grand Prix. So they would pay for my airfare, they would pay for my hotel, and I would speak to the guests about how glamorous Formula One is and what a fantastic racing driver I am, you know. So that was so everybody used to enjoy that, but that was the way to get me to the track, whatever it takes, you know.
Yeah, wow. And just going back to that, how dangerous they were. There, so like these was approximately what year we're talking about? 90s, right?
1992.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1992. Can you like tell us a little bit like some of these stories about how dangerous it actually was?
How
Because
dangerous?
lots of us were not even born. I wasn't even born, and some people might not know because Andrea Moda is not a famous Formula One team. Like,
Yeah, well, actually, we are famous because we were
yeah,
so bad we became famous, you know. So, yeah, no, we were they they a lot of people there did not know what they were doing. I mean, even a bad Formula One car can still do 300 kilometers an hour, you know. So it was like you're sitting in this thing going, you know, because the steering rack is going like this, the steering column, sorry. There was no windshield, so I'm going like this. It was unreliable. We didn't spend many laps on the track at all. At the British Grand Prix, the team put me onto the circuit with wet racing tires. You know the wet tires?
yeah,
Yeah, that's okay, but it was dry, you know.
yeah.
So the tires go good night inside one lap. So that's that. At the Belgium Grand Prix, they knew, they actually knew that there was a bad part on the. Sorry, I'm trying to speak slowly because I think your audience is Spanish.
Yeah, mostly, yes.
Okay, so hola. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to be slow. So they sent me out with a broken part of the steering. And at the Belgian Grand Prix, going into Eau Rouge, which is this left right uphill circuit, the steering stopped. It jammed, you know? And I was very lucky. I did everything right, but I was also very lucky. I hit the brakes, just managed to put a bit more turn on it, and went past the wall like this, went slow. Now I could steer, and I went, right. So then I went a bit faster, then I couldn't steer, and I thought, I know what this is. It's what we call the steering rack. So the steering rack was bending, which would not allow the steering arm to come in. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I don't want to get too technical, but the faster you went with the
Yeah,
downforce,
the downforce.
it bent the steering rack and you couldn't steer. So I came into the pit slowly and I told the team, and I said, I think we have a bent steering rack. And they said, yeah, we know. And I
Ah?
said, you know? And they said, yeah, we tested it on Roberto's car, who was my teammate, Roberto's car last week. And we found that. So I said, so you then took it off that car and you put it onto my car for qualifying at Spa for the Belgian Grand Prix. They went, yeah. Well,
Okay, good.
word about that got around to Bernie Ecclestone and to Max Mosley, and then they just went, that's it, to the team, you know, and some other problems that they had as well. So I'm very happy to be sitting here today
Yeah,
because
I can imagine.
that was pretty. I you know, like many other drivers, I'd had some very big accidents coming through international motor racing, but I think that one would have been good night. That one, if I hadn't been able to just get it through, I think there and then in that car, yeah, I think that would have been good night, Perry.
Uh, Probably. I mean, Eau Rouge, it's probably one of the most dangerous turns, uh, on the calendar that, mostly in Spa. A few years back, we lost Formula 2 driver Antoine Hubert, and Correa, it's now returning to Formula 2, which was the other driver involved. So I completely agree with you that we are very lucky to have you here today.
I think there's been a number of drivers that didn't survive that corner. Perhaps one of the most famous drivers was a German driver, a brilliant driver called Stefan Bellof. And Stefan was killed there very, very sadly in a Group C race, driving for the Rothmans Porsche team. So yeah, it's a tricky corner. But there are a lot of tricky corners in motor racing.
Yeah, and also another difficult patch that you had was the license, just the super license.
Yeah, that's right. Because, by the time I got to Formula One, is that I hadn't done enough racing to have the license automatically given to me. But there was a lot of people in Formula One that thought I should be in Formula One. So there was a big, big conversation. And Ron Dennis, Frank Williams, Flavio Briatore, Giancarlo Minardi, and also Marco Piccinini from Ferrari, they all said to Bernie, yeah, Perry should be in Formula One. They signed a piece of paper because they had a vote. And that's how it all happened. That's how I was given the license. So I wouldn't have got that license if the other team, these were other team managers, Ron Dennis from McLaren, Frank Williams from Williams, Flavio from Benetton, Marco from Ferrari, and Giancarlo from Minardi back then. So it was lovely that, everybody seemed to believe in me. That was great. But yeah, I wasn't able to do anything after all that support. I wasn't able to do anything in that car with that team in Formula One. So that was a shame, because it had taken me over 10 years to get to Formula One, with working on the oil rigs and racing and going back to the oil rigs and racing. That was it. So, but I got there, but as you probably know, I didn't win the world championship.
Sadly. Yeah, and I read, I can't remember exactly where exactly, that you had to, you yourself talked to some of the team managers about this problem with the license.
Yeah. Because
vouch for me.
Bernie, when I went to see him, said, look, Perry, you've got to go and see Ron and Frank and Giancarlo and everybody else and just explain the situation. So I did. And they were just immediately, just said, yeah, no problem. That was it. Except for Flavio, who wasn't sure who I was. But everybody else was okay.
That was mostly my question. How do you convince Flavio Briatore that you are you're worthy of the super license? Because previous guest, I asked him a little bit about Flavio, and he said, I can work at the same level, but not under him, or not in the same team. So giving a hint that he's not a completely easy man to work with.
Honestly, I had that impression myself when I first talked to him. But I think that what happened was that members of the Formula One press also talked to him, just so that it wasn't just me, and he listened to them, and probably, probably Bernie Ecclestone talked to him as well, because I know that Bernie was kind of behind me in, wanting me to be in Formula One. But as you said, there were problems with my license, which was, back then it was called FISA. Federation International de Sport Automobile. It wasn't just the FIA, it was called FISA back then.
Yeah, that extra S. And I also wanted to ask you, if you have any good anecdotes from your friends back in Formula 3. Yeah, it was 3 or 3000, with you said their names, with Blundell, with Damon Hill. I bet they're good stories, because I heard the nicknames. that
Yeah.
you gave each other?
Yeah, well, Damon's nickname, there's a cartoon character that we have in England called Secret Squirrel, and so we named Damon Secret Squirrel because Damon very rarely told us what he was doing, who he was talking to, and that's it. So Mark Blundell, we called him Mega, which is fantastic and everything else because Mark like mega watches, mega clothes, mega cars, mega houses, so he was called Mega. Um, and it goes on. And yeah, Johnny Herbert was, we say little un, which to slow it down means little one. Yeah, because he's quite short. I'm fairly short, but he's even shorter than I am. So he was a little un. Julian Bailey, who got to Formula One for Tyrrell, we called him Grumpy because he was so often he was like in a bad mood or wouldn't not very sociable to people. And me, they I don't know why they called me Mad Dog.
You don't really know why.
I got an idea why. So yeah, so we all had nicknames. So it was all, it was a lot of fun. I mean, we all still see each other now and phone each other and how are you, and the families used to know each other, because we all came through together. So we were and still are great friends. But of course, when you're fighting to get a different drive, sometimes it may be it's either Damon or me, or it's either Damon or Johnny. It's like, it's a tough game, and you're fighting on and off the track against the people who actually are your friends. But we all know the game is that, as long as you play the game correctly, that you don't do stuff that's bad against each other, then it's somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with Damon, when Damon came into Formula One at the same time I did, and Damon experienced a really big problem because he was with the Brabham team, and the Brabham team had no money. They were slow, they were unreliable, so Damon wasn't qualifying for races. The great thing for Damon was that, as well as driving for Brabham, he had a testing contract for Williams. So he was like the third driver at Williams. The even better news for Damon is at the end of his first year in Formula One, Nigel Mansell, who had just won the Formula One World Championship for Williams, had an argument with the Williams Formula One team, and he went. So suddenly, at the end of the year, with all the other top drivers already signed for top teams, Williams had a gap. They had an opportunity. They needed a driver. And they said, who should we get? Who should we get? And then finally they said, okay, we'll give Damon the chance. So Damon got into a world championship winning car for that year, which was fantastic for Damon. And of course, he went on to win, was it 22 races? And he won the world championship. And it's just brilliant. Absolutely. He had that chance and took it and made it happen. So that was fantastic. Yeah, I wish it'd been me, obviously, but Damon got it, and so that was so good.
I think it's so nice to hear you talk like this about your friends back then, because now in modern days, they were called the for like the Twitch guys, with Leclerc, Russell, Albon, and it was Norris, being kind of pause and talking oh, this is so healthy, not like it was in the old days, and that. And I think it's good listen to you talk about this from, because you were together probably in the late 80s or around the you started in 80 1981.
No, that was a bit early for me, but me and the boys really got together from 1984, 1985, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 91, 92, onward from there. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, I really like the fact that George Russell, Lando Norris, Albon, they're all great drivers. Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, that they all seem to have some fun. And I think that's great. But of course, on the track, it's,
Yeah,
you
they're
know,
rivals.
that's what it's about. Yeah, absolutely. But I enjoy that friendship that they have. It makes me laugh, and I think fantastic. That's good.
Yeah, and before we close the overall chapter, about Formula One and stuff, there are some questions about how you experienced all the issues with Moda from inside the team, like because you were getting bad pieces and things were not working out. I'm sure that made you not be the most like. I'm sure that made you angry
Oh
and
yeah,
furious
yeah, it
because they
really,
were sending you with bad cars, like knowingly
yeah,
to race at
yeah.
200, 300 kilometers per hour.
Sure. I mean, look, to begin with, I recognize this is a real small team with no money. And I thought, okay, look, just work, just try and help. Recognizing that we don't have the resources, we don't have the money. I wasn't testing, my teammate was. Okay, fine. Roberto, you make the car better, do what we can. We all try to be better. But after a while, it became very clear that the team could not really run two cars. That's what became really, really clear. And so I was beginning to get pretty annoyed about that situation. Um, yeah, that was pretty much about it. And then they had another driver who wanted to come into the team, and he had $1 million of sponsorship. So then the team wanted me out to bring that driver who had money in. Well, they weren't allowed to do that. Max Mosley, who was the head of the FIA, head of FISA at that time, said, no, you have to keep Perry, you know. So it's complicated. I could go into that because they'd had what's called their driver change already to bring me in. They weren't allowed to have another one. So it became there wasn't a lot of friendship for me inside that team. That was it. So it was I've been very lucky to have had great drives in fantastic teams with great people. But in Formula One, I didn't. So that was all there was to it.
Yeah, you raced in, well, you said it yourself, you raced in America. You raced in if I'm correct, in Le Mans. You also raced in Daytona, I think it was, and well,
Yeah,
other,
Daytona.
yeah, and other cars, in America, and
I
I
nearly won
rather
Daytona
successfully.
actually.
Yeah,
Very nearly won the Daytona 24 hours. We were 3 laps in the lead with 2 hours to go, and suddenly tick 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 the engine, and you think, oh no.
that must have hurt.
It did, yeah, because that was a great race to win, and we'd all been driving really well. The team had performed well. That was fantastic, and then it just went wrong. So that was a real shame, and it was the same when I was in America. Actually, is because we I was talking about opportunities before, and even if something looks wrong, sometimes you can make it right. So when I went to America, it was with a really small team, really small. But we were against the really big teams, the Nissan factory team, the Porsche factory team, the Toyota factory team, the Jaguar factory team, and they were spending, I don't know, $15 million a year. That was their budget. And we had $300,000.
Yeah,
So I
that's
kept
a
putting the
difference.
car at the front, and I set the pole positions, was leading the races. So that was able to make a lot of noise about what I was doing. We just didn't finish many races because, something on the car would break. And I didn't break it. Honestly, I wasn't the one breaking
I'm sure you weren't, and I'm like, obviously, you were great, like you were a great racing driver, and when you said at the beginning that you thought you could drive, I'm sure you prove it over and over again in America, and again, in the Formula 3000, Formula 3, and you proved it again in Top Gear that, of course, I want to talk about that problem, but that time being the Stig. How did that idea, that opportunity, come through?
Well, all the things we are talking about, my career was very up, very down, very up, very down. So everybody said, you need to write a book about it. So I did. And I wrote my book, which is Flat Out, Flat Broke. So we had this big party in London to launch the book. And there were lots of friends there from Formula One, lots of friends from some people who present TV shows. And that included Jeremy Clarkson. So I'd known Jeremy for a long time. We always got on very well. And it was at the book launch that Jeremy said, hey, Top Gear has not been broadcast for quite a long time at that moment. We are bringing Top Gear back, Perry, and we have this idea for you as a secret racing driver. So I said, okay. So he said, yeah. And I think you know the first Stig was all in black. And he said, you're going to wear black boots, black overalls, black gloves, black crash helmet, a black visor, and we're going to call you the Gimp. And I said, no, you're not. Yeah. And they were really serious about that. So finally they said, okay, right, we'll call you the Stig. And I said, good, because I'm not going to be called the Gimp, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what happened. And we started the show. And of course, we had no idea how big the show was going to be because BBC Top Gear went to 215 different countries. And it was really good to keep me secret as the Stig because everybody wanted to know who is the Stig? Who is the Stig? And that question, who is the Stig, became one of the top 10 questions asked on the internet. I was just behind, am I pregnant and is there a God?
That must have been
Is there a
fun.
God? Am I pregnant? Who is the Stig?
I'm sure you had lots of fun with that.
Oh, I did. Yeah. No, it was really, really good. And it's great that everybody really enjoyed it. And I always try, you know, whatever I was in, whether it's a small car or a real big, fast car, you know, I was always pushing for everything I can do anyway.
So, and what was for you like the best car you have ever driven? Like,
well,
you
I used to drive.
you could pick a few, just not a lot of them.
Sure.
Time-wise.
Well, when I was in the World Championship and Le Mans, I used to drive for Audi.
Mm-hmm.
And Audi used to give me my road cars. So for me, Audi are my favorite cars because they were free.
It's a very good reason.
Absolutely.
I have no way to answer back to that. It's a very good reason.
On the show, I think probably my favorite car was the Pagani Zonda. You know, it's kind of like very futuristic looking, and these things are so expensive. You know, now at the moment, I think they're like 2 million euros.
Oh wow!
So that was great fun to drive. You know, lots of power. It was like it's not as good as a racing car, of course, but it was very powerful, and I could have lots of fun with it. So yeah.
And how was the famous trio backstage?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, really good. You know, I think that what we say is the chemistry of their relationship, their friendship. That's one of the things that people, as viewers, like to witness. They like to tune in because it's a joke between friends. They're talking about cars, but then they can have some fun, and you, as the viewer, would think that they're kind of there with them. They would like to think, oh yeah, that's so funny. I understand the joke and I'm interested in the car, but what else are you doing now? So it was cleverly constructed. It was cleverly put together, that show.
yeah, it really was. Just a few nights back, I was with a friend, you know, and I told him like, yeah, I have Formula One channel on Twitch, and actually I'm doing an interview on the 16th, and his roommate was like, oh, it would be cool if you interviewed the Stig. I'm like, well, actually I am. Like, I don't know how you guessed it. And And this friend was like, well, I don't like cars that much. I don't know anything, but I love Top Gear because it's not like the cars. It seems like it's just an excuse to get three friends together and make jokes.
You know something, I think that you've got a point. I think that was the thing that cut through. That was the thing that got to everybody. And you're right. And it just happened to be about cars as well.
Yeah, there's just an excuse. And like they had that same chemistry probably off air, because like you cannot be that good at pretending so like for so long, you know?
Oh, I agree.
That's great. Top Gear was a show with three blokes with cars as an excuse. Yeah. That's a great definition of the of the show. So I have a few questions left for you, but I also want to encourage the chat to really ask any questions they might have while we continue the chat. Just to get the questions in and then ask them to you. So we have talked about Top Gear. We have talked about how difficult it was for you to get to Formula One, even if it was not such a good experience, but how hard it was, how long it took you. And I wanted to ask you, who was the person that believed in you the most and who supported you the most throughout those years?
I don't think it's just it wasn't really one person, because you change teams, and you know most of the time people change teams as they go up through the championship. So the major thing, I think that the major thing that you're trying to do is impress everybody. You're trying to impress the engineers and the mechanics and the team managers and the team owners that you're working for. And I think it's fair to say that many of those did really believe in me. There was a couple that I needed to work on a bit more by doing something on the track. You can't just talk to these people to get them to believe in you. You've got to go out there and put the lap time in. It's down to you to do that. So it's about it's great to have relationships, but you've got to perform. And that was the life, and that was the pressure, of course. But that's what I enjoyed. I mean, I was out there for myself to, like any other racing driver that's coming through. In this business, I'm, highly competitive. And I used to have to look at everything that I'm doing and thinking, I'm doing this wrong, or I'm doing that wrong, or I need to train more, I need to think more, I need to understand the car more, I need to understand the relationship between me and the engineer. What can we do better all the time? And I kind of enjoyed that challenge as well, because you just keep learning like that. So it wasn't all very easy. It wasn't there from the start. But I'm probably not unique here. Is that any driver coming up, you can have some great drivers, really great drivers at lower level in motor racing, but then sometimes they don't make the jump to the next level very well. Something just doesn't work for them. Maybe it's because the speeds are even faster. Maybe it's because it's more serious, everything demands more. And I think perhaps one of the things that I've always loved about my life and the industry of motor racing is that I always felt that no matter how much I was working or trying or giving, there was probably still more that was needed. You're always trying to think, there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Now I did have fun coming through. I really did. I have lots of fun stories. But from the work side of things, is that for the first few years, there were definitely mistakes I made. But you learn and you think, okay, I'll try and get better at that, try and get better at that, try and get better at that. So you like to believe that, yes, there is some natural talent. I hope so, because that gives you the heart to say, I want to work at this because I believe I'm good enough. But you can't just say, I'm good enough. It's about learning, and it's about doing more and doing more to be better and better and better. Because I tell you something, all the others out there, they're doing the ones that get through, they're doing exactly the same. You know, they really are. So it's about, to answer your question, it's what I was saying before. It's about impressing everybody, and then they talk to other people, and you develop a reputation where people think, hey, this guy's good, you know, really good. And that's how you come through, especially if you've got no money, you know? That's that's it. So that's probably a long answer, but it's the best I could do.
No, it's a very good answer actually. But you sure there was no one, even outside motorsport, that really supported you through that too? Because I'm sure, like, we all have, I'm sure you had your bad days. Maybe you even doubted yourself at some point. Wasn't there anyone who would kind of smack you on the back of your head and say, go on, like continue, I believe in you, I believe you can do this?
Well, I mean, the one person that was there for most of my career was my wife, Karen. You know, and remember, with all the financial difficulties that we had, with always being in debt and then saying goodbye to the house and everything else, you know, she was standing there saying, look, you know, I know you can do it. Other people know you can do it. This is, you know, whatever it takes. So, you know, there was never that problem at home to overcome. You know, she was right there as well at the same time. Um, so that was that. But apart from that, no, Ed, you. I think this is going to sound bad, but you collect people as you go along, and it just coming back to that thing is that these people will believe in you and continue to believe in you if you're the one on the stopwatch going fastest, yeah, or doing something that they know that car shouldn't be doing. So that's the reputation, you know, and I think that I can certainly look at a number of the motor racing press. Quite a lot of guys in the motor racing press really believed in me across a long period of time. So they would keep saying, you know, giving me some exposure because it's always good to again develop that reputation. So that's, you know, it's like a number of industries. You need you're out there waving a flag saying, look at me, you know,
Yeah.
that's what you're doing. And if you're I mean, you know, in Formula One, of course, um, I think the only thing people could see with me was my determination, is that I wouldn't stop and I kept trying, but I wasn't able to show any talent on the track because there wasn't that opportunity. Yet even I've been with, as I was saying before, I've been with really small teams with very little money, but there was an opportunity to try to fight, you know. But with Andrea Moda in Formula One, there was no opportunity. That was it. So coming through, yeah, a whole bunch of team managers that were my team managers or other team managers, and the press, and I keep mentioning the press because they're very, very important. If they believe in you, it makes life easier.
Yeah, especially British uh press, Formula One press, like racing press. We all know it's very powerful in, like, British motorsport press is very powerful in Formula One.
It is because the kind of geography of Formula One most of it happens to be in England.
Yep.
You know, so it is quite a center. You know, two other centers really, of course, Germany and Italy. You know, but an awful lot, a hell of a lot of it is in England. So you're right, the British press are, but
Very
I like them as well.
influential.
You know,
Yeah.
many of them were really good fun, very talented writers, and people that I still regard as friends. So that's great. And it's always lovely to see them when we're at an event or something and just say, hey, how you doing? You know, so that's great.
Yeah. Another question is, if a young talent came to you, maybe a young probably a teenager came to you saying, "I want to be a Formula One driver," what would be your best advice to him?
Read my book, pretty much, because it might be a very good opportunity to understand that if you don't have a very rich family, that this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to win on the track, and you're going to have to win off the track to make opportunities. And I think that, even though I'm really pleased to say that the book is, it is funny. Okay, so everybody likes to say it's very, very funny, but it does also describe the journey on how difficult this is, and what a problem it is, and really what you have to do. So if they really understand at 16, 17, 18, hey, there's no magic wand here. This, if you've got no money, you're going to have to go through this, and you're still going to have to be incredibly lucky to get there. If they really understand that, then that's the big thing before they even start.
Yeah.
So that doesn't sound very encouraging, does it? But it's just
I think it's
true.
real. Yeah, I think it's real.
It is. Sadly, it's real.
Yeah, and with the limitations, with the number of cars they can be on the grid, and the motorsport and all, it's not a cheap sport. Even if you just enjoy karting, it's not the cheapest sport you can play, but you can drive.
Well, I mean, it's with if you come up, as you know, I didn't come through karting, starting motor racing so late in life. But the guys in, these 10, 12, 13-year-olds, it's costing like 150,000 euros a year to put them out there in good karting, maybe more. You're not going to be 10 or 11 years old trying to get sponsors and walking around the industrial estates and making phone calls, are you? So somebody's paying for it from an early age.
Yeah. Okay, so here they wanted to ask you more about the Top Gear transition from what it was on BBC to what it is now on Amazon. I don't know if you know a lot about that transition, and it's not like Top Gear, like it's Grand Tour. They're asking me.
That's not my speciality subject.
Yeah, they wanted to ask you, nonetheless, like if they couldn't take you with them because of they're talking about copyright. I don't know if you know anything about it or you have no clue about it.
Yeah, but also you have to remember that they're probably talking about the Stig that was there when they went to Grand Tour. I wasn't Stig by then. Okay, I left the show a few years before that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got no comment to make on the Grand Tour.
Okay, thank you.
except that Top Gear was never as good again after Jeremy, James, and Richard left the show. So Top Gear was never as good again. So that's,
and probably never will be, because
unless they bring me back, of course.
Then it would be at least just as good, just as good or even better. Yeah, but yeah, like the chemistry, like they had, like that's hard to find.
I think so.
Yeah, and also my brother, as I told you before going live, he lives in the Isle of Man, and he wanted to ask you if you would like to drive him around the Isle of Man. I don't know if that's what he means, like driving the course. Not like participating in the race, but driving like doing a lap on the course. I'm guessing from his weird phrasing of the question.
Well, I mean, I hope your brother's got a lot of money, because I could be there next week and do it.
He knows people with a lot of money because, it's the Isle of Man and it's a very small island.
Tell him to phone me immediately.
Yeah, it's a small island. Actually, he likes to tell this story. Like, he was at a McDonald's drive-thru and he saw this amazing sports car. Amazing. And he just tapped on the window and asked the guy, like, what do you do for a living, and can I come work for you to have the money to buy this car? And it turns out it was, I don't know who it was. He worked at some business, had a private jet and used to fly to Malaga a lot, I think it was. So yeah, and they're kind of friends now, something like that. So and they met at the drive-through, McDonald's drive-through. So
yeah, I thought you was going to tell me the guy brought the window down, and his name was Big Mac. Yeah.
It was yeah, the one with the McLaren. Yeah, that was the friend. Yeah, I couldn't remember which car it was, but yeah. So if you want to go to drive,
one more question or something, because then I have to go. Then.
Okay, sure. So they're asking about the best car you've driven for the Top Gear.
I answered that.
Yeah, they enjoyed. Yeah, they enjoyed a lot the lap on the Clio V6. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah, that was a good car. That was a good car. I enjoyed that. I was spinning that around for fun. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad to hear it. And well, as you said, you don't have much time left. So my brother was here watching, so probably he'll contact you about that Isle of Man thing. And well, I think we covered most of it. Yeah. I encourage people at home. Well, I'll say it. I repeat it in Spanish after you're gone. I encourage the people back at home to buy and read his biography. It was flat out, flat broke, right? The title.
It's a bargain. You have to. It's so cheap. You really have to buy it.
Yeah, but it sold out pretty well. Like it.
No, it sold about
one very good in sales.
I think it sold 150,000 copies.
Yeah, so it wasn't that bad, right? Like it
it's
was
on
really
Audible
good.
now as well. It's on Audible. You can download it, and you lucky people, you can listen to me.
So yeah, I encourage you guys at home to buy it, read it, or buy the audiobook. I'm sure you will enjoy it as much as you have enjoyed the Bit Talk. Thank you so much, Perry, for coming today to talk to us. It has been an amazing pleasure talking to you and learning more about you and your story, and really just, even though you might say it's not like a successful one, I would say it's really inspiring to keep fighting. And really, really thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks very much for having me along. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you very much for listening, and muchas gracias, and adios.
Ciao. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.
Y ahora lo vamos a ir dejando por aquí. Gracias a todos por haber estado. Espero que hayáis disfrutado. Y nada, que tengáis un buen fin de semana, que os lo paséis fenomenal. Y bueno, y que mañana es viernes. Mañana es viernes y pasadlo bien. No sé, y disfrutad de la vida. Y nos vemos muy prontito en los directos. Así que nada, un beso a todos y chao.